Welcome back. Today, I have a very special guest that I met a year ago at Tech Show Frankfurt, where he was giving an awesome presentation on like very deep work in AI. And I have to confess, and you might remember this, that I used your presentation and the things you said for a really outrageous LinkedIn post about that and about you, which was super clickbaity, which I normally don't do, but I couldn't resist. And it was, you said AI is coming for us all. That's and then I think you reposted it, you commented it, and you mentioned that some people even came to you like, "Well, what do you mean? Is it going to be that bad?" And then we said, maybe yes. And then one year later, we had a meeting after your talk, which I very much enjoyed, and I did it kind of again, but then you did it to yourself in a way. Because you said, and I wasn't sure, like, did he really say that? And like at our company, nobody looks at the code anymore. When we go, and I'm like, you couldn't have said that, and other people asked the questions, and then I made another post, and I couldn't stop thinking about that because this is what kind of people are worried about. Are we getting automated away, and these kinds of things? And in your sector, I believe in a way it's changing the roles very much. And yeah, but I don't want to I'll let you talk now. Kyle Forster, welcome to the show. Welcome to Discover the Ordinary, and maybe give people a short version of who you are and how you ended up teaching machines to fix software, kind of autonomously, right? And correct me if I did anything wrong here.
That's exactly right. I mean, first, thank you so much for having me on. I follow your writings that you post. I appreciate them so much, and all the work that you've done for the community to really just move the ball forward on the way that we're all thinking about AI. To your point, I remember that show well. There was one developer in the audience who said, so, he raised his hand in front of 50 people, 80 people, I don't know what it was. I said, Kyle, so are you saying that, AI is coming for my job as a software developer? And I said, hey, I think AI is coming for my job as the CEO. Like, AI is coming for all of our jobs. Like, let's just, we're all in the same boat here. I think a lot is kind of shown on that. I have some funny anecdotes, even from the last couple of months. On my background, I started my career in networking. I started my career at Cisco, and the mantra, I believe why, in 2000, Cisco was the single highest market cap company in the world. It was amazing because of the, just the rise of the internet. But from inside, there's a very specific engineering mantra. We will build the most reliable products in the world. And every single time, what we show is that when an organization went with one of our competitors and they had a major network outage, we had people that could help, we had products that could help, and then the next time there was a network build out, they would always come to us. So for me, that was kind of where I started. That was my alma mater, and I really love that culture. I started one company, a networking company called Big Switch Networks, the early days of software-defined networking. And I remember very well, I had the CTO of one of the big US banks said, Kyle, you realize if our network goes down, there goes capitalism.
Jesus.
He may have been right.
You can make fantastic.
We specialize very much in ultra high reliability data center networks. The company was acquired by Arista because I think of our approach there. I went on my Google. I joined the Kubernetes team, and they had this, at the time, this very interesting approach. It said, like, hey, any software process can die. Any software process is a little bit flaky. But how do you build the system that as a whole, the system is ultra high reliability? And I really liked that approach too. A lot of the lessons that Google had learned from the very, very early days of web search and web crawling and ad serving, et cetera, that were baked in. One of the, anyways, I kind of fell in love with that culture and that mission. And then when a couple of people on my team approached me with this idea that really wasn't as much a good fit for Kubernetes, but really I thought was a fantastic fit for a company outside, that's when I left Google to start Runway.
Okay. It's no, it's super interesting. Like how you describe it, that super high reliability, and now we have this automation journey, right? And we always talk about is like, especially in banking, about human in the loop. Highly regulated industries. You
Yeah,
also come from highly regulated industries. Like everyone was a Cisco client.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's like this, and what I'm wondering, like maybe first of all, like for more the non-technical people, is like you observe systems and fix them really fast when they are about to go down, or if they go, you make them go up very very quickly. Like just also for me to paraphrase, and like how do you trust an AI agent to do that, reliably, and how did you get there? Like were you also a bit like hesitant in the beginning, because I completely would be. I'm very much, I want to be in control of my AI agents, whatever I do. Like if I care about it a little bit, I'm like a control freak.
Yeah.
How did you get where you are now?
So it's a very interesting, you know, it's an interesting sequence, right? Because when I ask people, I like to just make it very personal. Say, okay, do you use AI to do web search, which is ChatGPT's primary use case? And I think most folks I talk to say, yeah, like actually, instead of going to Google and clicking through 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 web pages, if it's something that's kind of an answer that's probably on the public web, if I ask the question to ChatGPT, it'll do the web search for me. It'll summarize the top 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 search results, and it'll bring back an answer.
Hmm.
And I use it every day for that. Frankly, it's kind of sad. I don't remember last time I used Google search. It's kind of rare because it's such a luxury, right? Have somebody else do the Google search for you and then have them to summarize what it is that they found. Uh, so I think that use case became a very early trusted use case for AI. Trusted, sure, not 100% of the time. There are plenty of web searches that you want. Maybe some people want precise control, but you can just watch like Google search volume has been dropping as ChatGPT's volume has been going up. Um, I think then we saw kind of the meteoric rise of Cursor and Claude last year, and really the continued meteoric rise of Claude. We saw Manus and their acquisition by Meta of using AI to suddenly write something. And this is either writing code or writing documents or writing, now with Claude Design, writing slides. And it's pretty fascinating. It's a subtly different, especially I like to say, hey, if you haven't used ChatGPT and Claude co-work side by side, it's really interesting. The conversation is very different. One is clearly built around web search, and the other is clearly built around building a document or building a slide or drafting an email. It's really about building, right. It's not for, let's say, writing something. And then I say, okay, so which one of these would you ever give your username and password for your bank?
Hmm.
So like that. What? Huh? A hard stop. So, okay, I agree. I wouldn't give either of these the username and password for my bank accounts. But can we start taking, but it's very interesting to see how incredibly good we've gotten about web search and how much less time in my day that takes. That used to take a lot. How incredibly fast I am now at writing things, emails, documents, etc. Because I've practiced now a fair amount and I write better, faster. The code thing is its own explosive growth. Happy to talk there. But then, we start to think, all right, well, if I could have a username and password for my bank, maybe that was read only, and maybe that was really, really, really private. It is kind of a hassle for me to log into my bank, especially my business bank accounts where we have sort of 4 or 5 and start to collate, all right, exactly what was our spend last month? Like how much cash do we have? There's like a fair amount of questions that I have day to day. And it'd be really nice if I could ask that to an agent with some confidence and some safety. And that's where we start to bridge into things that current AI from the big products, it's not totally there, but I think that's where we're going, in a very large scale. And then the next is being able, can I have an AI agent that'll actually pay my bills?
Hmm.
Most of my bills are automated, but there are a few that aren't, and that would be pretty fantastic. I think AI in large enterprises dealing with production environments where there's really a lot of money on the line and customer data on the line, Like, we're not going to suddenly stop and say, hey, AI was really great at these other things, but AI is not appropriate for me to ask how much money is in my bank account or how much money is in my 5, 6, 7, 8 business bank accounts. We're going to want AI agents to do that. I want them today. And then we're going to say, hey, can I get this AI agent to pay my bills? Yeah, I do. It's just a very natural. But the amount of infrastructure, kind of the amount of scaffolding, what they call scaffolding and guardrails, there are a lot of different terms in the industry. There's a lot of stuff that we need to put in place. It's a little bit different from the current standards with Claude and with ChatGPT, just to make this safe, because I don't want it to suddenly decide that think it's paying a bill and suddenly empty out my bank account and send it to some phishing email.
Yeah, absolutely. That you have these. I mean, web search got incredibly good because it used to be just a couple of searches, and now if you do deep research, it's hundreds of agents and sub agents going out and trying these things. And I mean, when I talk to senior execs at banks, for example, I mean, their first question would be, of course, I have these use cases that are, what's the weather going to be today? Or what, like give me the table of all the World Cup soccer matches so I can kind of follow because I didn't have time. But this is like super low impact on any, even my private life. I mean, if it gets it wrong, who cares? I mean, maybe I do if Germany lost, but we're out anyways.
Yeah. So it's not a bank account, right? Like
it's not a bank account. Yeah. And what a lot of the people would really ask and they did, because I told them about your presentation also, I talked to them about that, and it's like, but we have like processes that would end capitalism, like if they went wrong. And if you work at the central bank here in Frankfurt, they actually might. How did you with Runwen get there that you said, okay, we're going to use AI, we're going to use AI coding agents to work with it, to where you are now, where you said, what, like even for business critical processes, we know our tools are so good. We have the same quality as if a human would look at it, or maybe better. I don't know.
I mean, for me, a big first step was, rather than take a big leap into the unknown, we spent 2 years actually following around engineers who were working on mission critical systems. And we just kind of looked at actually their real day-to-day, not their self-reported, hey, here's what we think we do day-to-day. We actually looked at what they do day-to-day. And 95% plus of the day is spent reading, gathering information, collating this information, correlating it together, trying to, with the thousands and thousands of data sources and literally petabytes of data that you have in a large financial services firm that's generated every minute. I mean, large financial services, petabytes of data every single minute. If something is going wrong, it's a large-scale research problem first. And so the very first thing that we started doing was to say, all right, with that research problem, there's a heck of a lot of not super deep thought that goes on in that research problem. It's little tiny bits of deep thought followed by a lot of like blah work, deep thought, blah work, deep thought, blah work. And how could we rethink this to say, all right, have a human say, hey, call the 20-60-20 rule, have a human think for the first 20% of the time, say, hey, here's sort of my hypothesis, or here's roughly what I think. Because that forming a hypothesis is hard. And that takes real kind of senior work. Have the agent do 60%. Okay, given your hypothesis, I'm going to gather a bunch of data that can either prove the hypothesis or disprove the hypothesis, or frame a few alternative hypotheses. And then come back and let the human do the last 20%. Okay, given the hypothesis, given the evidence, here's what I'd like to do next. That's kind of where we were about a year and a half ago. And then we gradually grew from there and there, on top to say, hey, can the machine come up with a couple, if the human doesn't have a hypothesis yet, can we make it so that a human engineer can say, hey, I don't have a hypothesis yet. Okay, now that's the first 20%. Let the agent do the 60% of the work of coming up with 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 or 10 hypotheses. Then the last 20% is the human engineer saying, yeah, these 1 or 2 hypotheses, these look good. And reframing this idea of every time you work with AI agents, and when there's a lot on the line, think about it. A human doing 20%, an agent doing the middle 60%, and then a human doing the last 20%, you can find a lot of workflows that fit that category, a huge number of workflows that fit that category. And I think that it sets AI up for success. It also sets up, I know, like for most junior employees, this is kind of the way they work too. You don't give a very, very, very junior employee instant access to be able to shut down a bank's entire systems. You kind of set that, you kind of have a conversation, they kind of go off in the right direction, usually with a very, very senior employee. And then they spend, a couple of days and then they come back and say, hey, here's what I found. And let's do another quick check-in and see, are we going in the right direction? So that 20-60-20 rule is very human. It works very, very well with AI when we think about AI workflows. And I think it gets people out of the mode of thinking about this as traditional automation, and it really sets people up more for the future of AI.
Yeah. I love that. That is my mantra, completely my mantra, that we say, because like we talk a lot about, if you go to AI meetings, if you look at LinkedIn, it's like this N8N automation stuff, which I think, it's just RPA, like that we had, I don't know how many years ago, like robotic process automation with some LLM in between, which is nice. And I'm sure it saves some people and also some small businesses some time. But it's like a conceptual change in how we work with everything with computers and how we think about things. And maybe let me try to build like an analogy to the banking world, and you tell me if this could be correct, right? So way back 10, 15 years ago, we were building risk systems for banks that were lending money and they just want the money back, right? And you must have risk criteria for that, and then you must monitor the people that you lend money to and see like, are they going to defraud me? Like just and how much can I give them? How much more can I give them? So we had very smart risk people give us rules, from 100 years of experience with lending money, and then you bake them into the software, and it's a rules-based system, and they check patterns, like because we have all that transaction data, which is a lot, hundreds of thousands every day, if you're a big bank, and what then the risk analyst does is they sit down and they get alerts, right? Which are like kind of like a to-do list, and then I see, what. And I have to use my knowledge about the client, my knowledge about their industry to say, is this normal or should I call this guy? and or should I do something, or should I reduce the limit and like shut down the credit line or something like that? And the way we thought about this problem was at that time without machine learning and without AI was to say, we want to give them the best chance to catch the fraudsters, to catch the problem. We cannot give 100% guarantee, but we're definitely much better at that than without the software. And we give them the best possible use of their time each given day. That was our goal. Yeah. And with AI on top, and I think you said something like that. I read a couple of things that you said about that, like the tools have to be better and we have to get better alerts and stuff like that. And that was kind of the analogy that I was thinking about. And then what you're saying now, I believe, and this is like kind of hopeful, this is just a different layer of abstraction for a really experienced person. Let's say we don't go for a risk analyst, but the head of risk at that department, for example, and they can make like really good judgment calls together with the AI, where we analyze like complete patterns for a sector, for example. Yeah, we don't look at the code of this sector and the minutia of the transaction, but we say, what, seasonally, this should spike and then it should hard drop because it's like artificial lawn or something like that for the summer. And but what is the total of artificial lawn sold in Germany? And can this company, what kind of market share does this company then have? And is this even logical that they need this much liquidity? Like for what? Right? Is that in your
I think that's right on. I mean, I think that so many jobs as we look forward, I think that so many jobs are going to move from, hey, can I handle 100 alerts about credit risk in my inbox and make decisions, to how can I train this thing that's going to read these 100 alerts better and better and better? Can I train it to be more and more sophisticated How can I train it to have fewer errors over and over and over and over and over? And I think that will be a fundamentally human process. I think many of these, I think a lot of people thought of these as engineering processes because so many of them involve building code and iterating on code, and building code and iterating on code. I think that a lot of that is going to go away to some extent. And there'll be a lot of people thinking very, very deeply about, okay, I'm not going to be the one answering these 100 credit risk alerts. I'm going to think very, very deeply on the criteria by which something else should be handling these 100. To your point, like, should we be introducing some concept of total market size? And does this company need the liquidity because they're asking for liquidity of about 5 times the total market size here? That's a very sophisticated. Is that will that introduce more errors into the system? Will that introduce fewer? How are we going to run experiments around that? Mm-hmm. Kind of the same way that when you think about hiring a team, instead of thinking about just hiring one person, which I think a lot of us think about, if you're going to out of the gates hire a team of 10, you really think a lot about, okay, how am I going to train all 10 of these people so it's not complete chaos? Mm. If I'm not entirely certain, do I want to train one of them in a slightly different way and then have that one person train the next 9? Okay, maybe that makes sense. Do I really want to hire all 10 at once, or do I want to kind of iterate on this a bit? But over and over, I find people kind of anthropomorphize AI as thinking about training one system instead of, you think a little differently if you're hiring 10 people all at once. You're like, wow, this could be complete chaos. And it takes some real thought to kind of avoid the chaos.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like we have all this talk about this is a jagged intelligence and it's very good at certain things and it's very good at getting you really, really close to the solution, but you still have to select. And sometimes this is deeply philosophical and I'm sorry, but it's like I'm reading a book by a German professor that compares, and this is the stochastic parrot theory that I don't agree with, but he has a really funny take on this, that this is knowledge that is based purely on syntax, and it doesn't have knowledge about the world. Yeah. And this is why I don't know how much time you spent with Fable. I spent too much time with it, and it's a different kind of language. The words that it invents, which is like sometimes deeply infuriating because I don't understand it anymore. It's just too dense in a way, and it's a different way of thinking about work. I think that you can say we have a machine now that is like really smart and gets us really close to the problem, but we have to ground it in real life. Yeah. Something that, like a risk analyst can understand, for example. Like if I give them the kind of language that I get out of it sometimes, the most important instruction from me, plain English, please, and then I put it in an MD file because it was just, I don't know what your experience is with that, but it's just it was really, I felt really stupid in some ways.
Interesting enough, I think that for so many people, especially frankly executives who are not using ChatGPT and Claude and like some of the more popular consumer AI tools very heavily and feel a little bit maybe intimidated by it. Yeah. I think that there's actually a massive amount of simple management practice that helps immensely when thinking about designing like AI native processes. Because you spend a lot, going back to that 20-60-20 thing, I think if you frame a lot of workflows like that, okay, human kind of needs to set the direction. You let the AI do 60% of the work, then you want the AI agent to come back to you. You kind of have to think deeply about like, it's like with the same thing like with a junior employee. You're like, okay, here's what I want you to do. But then when you hit this point, here's where I want you to come back and check in with me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, build this research report for the client. But before you email it to the client, I want to make sure you come back to me so I can read it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or it's, hey, can you build a really, really rough draft? Don't do diagrams, don't do full language. Just build a bunch of bullet points that this research is going to say for the client. Come back to me with your really rough set of bullet points. Mm. Let's talk through those. And then you go off and build the final draft and then come back to me again after the final draft. And then you go to the client. So thinking very, very deeply about the loop that you want to be in. Mm. Or maybe it's, hey, build a research report for the client, send it to the client, and come back to me when you have some feedback from the client. Mm. It's a very different loop. It's actually a very, 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 very different loop.
Mm.
I think thinking deeply about, all right, when are these three different loops appropriate with a colleague is not that different from thinking about how to design these like very AI native workflows. Like, hey, what work do I want the AI to do, and when do I want the AI to come back to me to check in? I think a
Mm.
lot of people forget about that uh,
Mm.
second side of it. So, whether it's credit risk, the earlier example of giving a AI agent my username and password for my bank. I would want it to come check in with me before it transfers any money anywhere. Period. Full stop. But then maybe over time, hey, okay, I want to come back to me and check in if it's transferring money anywhere outside of this list of people that I've already approved because we're doing business with them. And then you kind of gradually train these things so that they come back to you a little bit less often. But
Mm.
skipping that whole training cycle, I think, is a big mistake.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and I think also if I understand correctly, that's what you did. You really grounded your agent work in the day-to-day experience
Yeah.
of the engineer and of the, let's say, bigger problem and how it was solved in a way that um, in the end, the result is very targeted agents and very targeted loops of agents. But to get there, uh, it needs a lot of time because you actually need to study the process in a way that wasn't studied before, right? Like, if I understand correctly, because I think what still breaks my brain every day is that we have now some kind of software system that is mostly right, but sometimes it is very wrong. And that was never the case. It was always that we had to put our thinking in this little box of, yes and no, and this is the drop down, or we leave the field empty and then I cannot make the transaction or whatever like that. But this is, to me, this is crazy. So you always get closer and closer to the solution. And what I'm asking myself is really, aren't we all just an MD file in the end? Will we? That's scary because we got too comfortable. I had to say that.
There are times when I wonder the same thing myself, especially with three kids.
Why with three kids? Why with three
Well, am I just nothing more than an MD file about what's for dinner, what's for dinner, what's for dinner, and I'm just spouting it right back. Can I watch some more TV? It's a fairly simple rules engine, but the summer rules are a little different from school term time rules, and there's a little bit more context than a typical. You watched a lot of TV yesterday, less TV today. I think that I might just be a Claude MD file because that works a little bit better than a rules engine. I tried writing down all of the rules on one sheet of paper around screen time, and oh my god, was that ever a disaster! Just a complete and utter
and
disaster.
and sometimes dad hallucinates a new rule that wasn't there before because I did a special thing. I don't know, like I brought home an A or something like that for my school paper or something like that in a way that yeah, this is good. I
Yeah,
haven't thought about it like that. But this is yeah, but isn't this like but this I mean this is comforting and this is funny, it's great, but like but what if it's true? I'm thinking like this, let's just say that in the future, I mean this will get better and better and more accurate. Right now we're at maybe 20 60 20, but maybe the last 20 maybe the last 20 are going to shrink. The first 20 probably not, because this is like the kind of the conceptual planning and things like that, especially if we do things that are new to us, like if it's routine, it might shrink. And I'm just wondering, I mean, and this is like I don't know, the prediction, the prediction phase. If you're feeling super brave, how do you think this is going to develop? Let's say, because we talked about context windows as well. Like at the moment, if these things get really more accurate and we move to 20 70 10 and like this, and if we had infinite context, because now, or close to infinite context, because right now it's mostly like in my world of, I don't know, let's say managerial decisions, I try to fill the context window as efficiently as possible with less and less garbage. Right?
yeah,
And then I get some good options, right? And I imagine with you, like, because it cannot look at the whole code base, like or at least with some code bases, right? Like how do you deal with that, and how do you imagine that in the future? Just do you have any?
Oh, it's a great question. I mean, coming back again to I think that for people who have a lot of experience managing people,
Mm-hmm.
managing AI, turns out there's a lot they can lean on. There's a term in AI called progressive disclosure. And that's okay when you present a piece of information to an agent. If you have if you have petabytes and petabytes and petabytes of information, can you present, hey, here are 10 different sentences. Which one of these is the most interesting? Or which two or which three? Okay, these three are the most interesting. Okay, let me do a little bit of digging. Okay, across those three. Now let me expand each of those three into a paragraph. All right, now that I see the paragraph, which one of these three paragraphs is the most interesting? Oh, this one. Okay, now that I see that in paragraph form, can I expand that into 2 pages? Okay, yeah, which section of this 2 pager is most interesting? Okay, now that I see that, can I now expand this into 100 pages? And there's a constant idea of progressive disclosure, of only bring in as much information as is necessary and kind of double click and double click and double click. It's very human. But I think, AI engineering forces you to make it a little bit explicit. But it's a very intuitive concept, and I think giving it a name, progressive disclosure, will only give the thing as much info. Don't dump a petabyte into the context window, dump 10 sentences, and then say, hey, which one is the most interesting? Which one? It's the exact same thing that you do with people, too. Tell me your life story. Well, I'll tell you like the 30-second version, and if you're really interested, then I'll tell you the 2-minute version. If you're really interested, then, we can go on and I'll tell you the 50-year version, but, let's not do that all at once.
Yeah.
I think that actually helps. I think the progressive disclosure vocabulary helps people think about these things quite a bit. And where they're, when you're looking for an opportunity with AI, I think as an executive saying like, okay, so how are we going to do progressive disclosure? What's our strategy there? You come up with some pretty interesting and intuitive answers. I think thinking about it as a training problem. Also, I've been using this fantastic AI executive assistant. It's actually other than my executive assistants at Google, this is second best, and that's saying something. And it's pretty fantastic. But it's interesting because it didn't start that way. It actually, what made it great was that over the course of about 2 or 3 weeks of training, I was giving explicit feedback, but the real genius of the design, I talked to the founder. He said, hey, people are incredibly bad at telling us their preferences. Their preferences are very often aspirational. Hey, please call me at 8 o'clock in the morning every day. It had this voice feature to voice walk through my schedule. I answered that call 3 times, and then I kind of stopped answering it.
Yeah.
And I talked to the founder. He's like, hey, I looked through your file. It's one of those where your preferences are incredibly aspirational. What we actually learn about somebody's preferences is far more accurate, but it takes a couple of weeks to learn those. So there's this whole thing of, instead of designing the software to work the exact same way every time, it's how do you design for that whole learning curve? Going back, I think, to the credit alert, it's like, hey, step one is, hey, how do we design it to alert at the right time? Okay, then how do we design it to read 100 of alerts and summarize them into 3 different categories so a human can make a decision? Okay, let's iterate on that a couple of times. And then, okay, how do we actually get to make decisions itself? I think these are actually fundamental training problems. And you think about training a new executive assistant, or you think about training a fresh employee, or even a very senior employee who's new to the organization. I think that you need to think about that with these systems because they learn fascinating ways. But that learning period is really, really, really important.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point, and I love the progressive disclosure one. I'm going to steal it. And absolutely, this is great, and especially right now where context windows are still kind of small. It reminds me of, I have this theory that I don't know if it's mine, I don't know, but that every technological innovation period had an inception date and then maturity, and at the inception date the data storage was incredibly small, and then we made another leap, right, from the floppy disk to the CD to the DVD, and then oh my god, now we have internet, and now we have the super small modems, and then we have ISDN, and then we have DSL, and now it's the same thing. We have this thing in the contact window. I mean, what is that? That's not even a floppy disk.
Yeah.
And it's just like that, and And I love this because going back to your point about observing real engineers and real cases and then building the tools, building better tools, I think that's also one of your pet peeves, really, like to to um, uh, to have the right alerts at the right time, at the right context at the right time. I really love like this could be one step of the evolution. We say we have self-learning systems that help us train, and that we don't have to fight so hard for, when do we do what, but we get even um, like ideas from the AI about how that could go, and we don't have to work so hard like you did, and observe it over time, but we can just train faster and in real time, or something like that.
I mean, it's a major part of our product that we're playing with now, of having it reflect on how it served an engineer over the course of this chat session, have it reflect on how it served the person over the course of this day, have it reflect on how it served the person over the course of this week.
Yeah.
Come back with what it learned, and amongst the things that it learned about how to do better, what should it serve back to a human to say, hey, I think that here are 3 things that I could be doing better. Do you agree? Exact same thing you look for in a fantastic colleague, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
and you find with really senior colleague, they come back and they say, hey, I think I learned these 3 things about working in this organization that are different from my last. And I just want to run it by you. A quick hallway conversation. That's it. But it really is very, 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 very appreciated.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's great. It's just because normally it's just the negative feedback, like between people at a lot of work cultures, and it's just, I think it's a natural thing, unfortunately, and just say, you know what, and then we have a really good project, and we put in the learnings into the AI. Maybe we build a new skill, or something like that, or just one instruction, in a way, that for me stopped Fable on making up new words that don't exist 80% of the time, for example, because that was driving me crazy. That's UX design. And ah, and maybe this is maybe a good point. I'm thinking a lot about kind of what UX design means, and what agent design means in this day and age. And it used to be a lot what we see and what we can click, and stuff like that. But right now, I think this is changing. Even like UX design could be, how does the agent talk to you, and that it doesn't annoy you, because Fable is obviously a very good model, but it annoyed me so much, and I could hardly work with this because I could not understand what it was saying. Yeah, just very bad UX design. And one funny problem from my sales and go-to-market world is how to extract the knowledge where a deal really stands. And that is what I set out to solve. Because if you just, like, for me, probably for you as well, I can just walk around and prompt. When I sometimes I go running, walking, and I just prompt about this problem. But a lot of people are not so AI native, or maybe they don't like it to talk, 5-10 minutes into the void, like a crazy person. But,
My wife thinks I'm a little weird when I do that, but I still do it.
me too. Yeah, mine too. But it's fine. It's fine. They know who they marry. That's what my wife keeps telling me. But I go outside a lot of the time. Yeah, and this is context, right? And how do you extract this context really efficiently out of a person's head? That is very hard. And one design choice that I made, I built like a Tinder AI deck where you can swipe yes and no, or have multiple choice things. I can send it to you if you're.
I saw that actually. It was a fantastic idea. I was like, the idea of giving feedback via a very quick swipe left, swipe here, 10 questions, swipe left, swipe right, not multiple choice.
Yeah.
Nothing else, but just all it takes. I thought that was a beautiful idea of how do you get context out of somebody's head?
Yeah, exactly. And like, of course, this is simple, and it was mostly for non AI native people to just, there's a prepared prompt, and then it builds itself in the background, and then you just go to ChatGPT, and you just have to tell them, this is what I'm working on right now, and it will give you ideas that connect to the cards that you saved and that you answered. doesn't work every time, but I think what we will see, or I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, is like this. I think this is a Google term now. It's like generative UX, or I thought about liquid UX, where you get the input that you need at that time, and the agent gives you that input. Sometimes voice dictation is great, or for sometimes, maybe sometimes it's a multiple choice question, like, does this mean the deal is dead if this happens, and then it puts into the CRM. And I think that could also be the part of continuous learning, because like negotiation and deal reality is very human and very messy. And I think like a Salesforce, I mean, you can put it in, but what does it mean, and how do we incentivize the people to put in the right things, or even finding out the right things, to think about the psychology, the game theory behind something. And I don't know if you see that in your world as well, like this kind of interaction design.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, we have an amazing actual advisor to us. He was the former head of UX for Google Maps.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've given him multiple TED Talks, just a truly beautiful mind to talk to, and just so advanced in the way that he thinks about it. I think like those conversations have sharpened our thinking a lot. For me, way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, when I was in grad school, actually, my academic advisor was Terry Winograd, a UX researcher, who really became famous for the writing he was doing on conversational approaches to analyzing user experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this method that said, look, every user experience is a conversation where a computer is kind of asking you, what do you want to do next? And back to progressive disclosure, the goal is it should show you just enough information that it gets from your head what you want to do next without too much work on either side.
Mm-hmm.
Don't show 20 options at first, show a few options, and then the next reveal themselves after a click or two, or the next reveal themselves after a few keystrokes. And I think this entire idea of UX is just the process of helping somebody work through the decisions that they want to make about what to do next.
Yeah.
I think that we're in the early days where most AI UX is all text back and forth. I think that we're certainly, I like the generative UX work that I'm seeing coming out of Google. It's a little tricky to control. We tried a couple of prototypes around it. It shot a little bit wide of the mark, but I think that the world will just figure out how to use this.
Yeah.
Because really, we're just asking somebody what do they want to do next, but how can we ask that in ways that are extraordinarily human efficient? And I think we'll all get better and better at that.
Yeah, like the piece of software is so interesting is yours will be much different than mine. Like for example, what we see and how it talks and how it adapts, and we also, I'm thinking, of myself also, I have my context window and it's constantly overloaded. Like with Fable, we wouldn't know how much it would last. And of course I wanted, before I start paying for the API, I wanted to get a lot out of it. So I had 5 very deep chats with it at the same time. And that was just, it was horrible. You can, I felt I can have 3, maybe for me, the sweet spot is like 2 heavy tasks and then 1 medium or light one. And then I start, 1 coding, and then I write a few emails, and then maybe another coding projects or what have you. And that is, for me, I feel I'm the bottleneck. I'm completely the bottleneck now. And what I would need in my world is exactly what you do, and I'm far less automated than you probably is kind of these, I don't know, then maybe better questions, better results, so I can think faster. I don't even know, because I mean, in the end, I have to make, if it's like mission critical decisions or anything, I have to make them and I have to think about them.
I mean, I think so. I've been lucky in my career to bounce back and forth between individual contributor positions and very large scale management positions, and individual contributor, large scale management.
Yeah.
And, I think that management's exhausting, man. Like management's like really, really, really exhausting. Like doing it really well, like, in 50 like working hours per week, that's like, at Google, I was averaging about 84 meetings per week. You think like, okay, you kind of have to do the 20, 60, like, kind of working with the team to say, hey, go off, like this is the time at which, let me set direction. The only reason I'm setting direction is just because I'm sitting in all of these meetings and, we're at a 600 person team. So,
Mm.
Anybody could have done it, but somebody needs to like share context across all of these, across all these independent teams that are working very fast and very independently,
Yeah.
and being able to be really explicit about saying like, hey, here's the point at which you should come back to me, less because it's me and more because at this point you're probably going to collide with this other team or these 4 other teams, and you might not fully recognize that collision, but come back to me and I'll help sort it out.
Mm.
And it's worth like coordinating with them in advance. Sometimes yes, but sometimes the probability of collision is so small, who really cares? Like, it's a fascinating thing. I found myself like literally this morning and helping one of our folks prototype a new variant of our product. And we talked about like, okay, here's the feature. Okay, we have one agent going off and doing the feature, and then another agent saying like, okay, so how are you going to user test this feature?
Mm.
And then another one doing that. And then only because we've documented so many times now how we like agents to do user testing of new features, we've built up such a corpus of knowledge in this repository, so many documents, and a lot of them were wrong and they took a lot of iterations. But we now can actually say to a third one, hey, when this thing comes back and critiques the user experience, critique its critique, and now go start improving it. We couldn't have done that 2 months ago, 3 months ago. We couldn't have done that. We simply didn't have the knowledge embedded in this particular code repository. We weren't even close. It would have been, I mean, I can tell you, I tried 2 months ago and they went completely off the rails and made a mess. So, it just took a lot of training. But as we train the system, now the loops that it can do are better and better and better.
It makes a lot of sense to get, let's say we call it, this is better answers. It's better answers and better iteration and faster. And the funny thing is, I had this big aha moment, when coding models in front end became really good around November, December last year, right? It was insane, like Gemini 3 and then what was it, Opus 4.5, insane. And what I felt is we there's a lot of software vendors, and this is what I write about too. You go to a bank, you go to a corporate and say, we can do everything, and they say, yeah, but we don't know our use cases, and then you just like like in a Western, you just stand there, and but if you can show a prototype or like 1 to 3 use cases, for example, this is what it looks like. Like, do you love this? Do you hate this? Like, even if you hate this is great, because we know this is gone for several reasons. And I think and that is the human way of the training or of the feedback loop. And this was my aha moment. If we can, like, everybody says show don't tell, like, for, I don't know, in film, that's a big thing. But that was just something, I really stopped making slides so much. I mean, it's easy, but I just show the thing and I just say, do you want it like this or any different way? And I wonder, it seems that it's similar for you, but I wonder, did you have like a similar aha moment in the last few months where you say, like, even in your private life, like where you say like, wow, this blows completely my mind.
Yeah, it was something that there's this great author called Steve Yegge, Yeggge. He's a big open source contributor, and I love the way I love his writing style, and I love his content. And I think he wrote one article with a concept that for me was a big aha moment. It was called he called it the discernment horizon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, on some level, you're asking agents or people something about a domain that you know well enough that you can judge the answer. Or if it's written material, you can judge the quality of the written material. But it goes kind of further and further and further away. And suddenly you start to find that you're asking it to provide, let's call written material for a second, written material that's so far outside your area of expertise that you can no longer judge it. And he called that the discernment horizon. And with one example, I have my discernment horizon around my dentist is very slim. I have no idea if my dentist is excellent or really like bottom 20%. I don't know. I have no way of judging the work. I have no way of even asking the right questions to know how to judge. I don't even know the right questions to ask of my dentist. So I think like dentistry is like beyond my discernment horizon. And I think the best thing that I can do is like maybe get some references, but like it's kind of rough. Whereas, there's a lot like about our company that's within our discernment horizon, and how we deal with clients is within my discernment horizon. And I think it's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I think it's also something that many executives are very familiar with because you're hiring people that have experience outside of domain. I've hired finance people. I've never done finance. I have no idea what the difference is between accounting and finance, and yet I still had to hire a CFO. I had to hire a CFO twice. And like, I don't even really, I mean, by the third time, I kind of figured out the right questions to ask, but it's kind of scary, right? When you're sitting there, and it's a very executive function thing that a lot of people have to do in their careers is hire somebody in a domain where they have zero personal experience.
Yeah.
And so I thought that this was a really interesting, it's a big aha moment, the discernment horizon, and knowing when you're operating within it, knowing when you're operating outside of it. And operating outside of it's very hard.
And very true. But I think like the good news is that now we can kind of push on that discernment horizon. I mean, I can say, my teeth kind of started hurting more or going worse in the last year. And then that's when I switched my dentist. So I'm going to ask him some very innocent questions. And I don't know, and ChatGPT or Claude is going to help me with that. Like, is there a correlation, or I'm just getting older, or my habits changed and I eat more candy, or something like that. So it can, but it can help you with just with plain logic, and then you move it. You can never get rid of it completely, but at least you can ask educated questions and then see if you like the answers from them. So last question, if you want it, is there anything that I didn't ask that you would have liked to talk about?
Oh gosh,
yeah. If not, I can ask something else.
I think that people are worried about jobs. Like AI is such a knowledge worker tool that I think people always say, are there going to be more jobs or fewer jobs on the other side, and which jobs are going to be really successful? I always like to get that question because I'd like to hear 10 different people's answers to it. So maybe that would, I'd say, if there was any one, I think that we've touched on it a bit, but I think that to me is the one that.
Thank you, Kyle. This was amazing. Thank you so much for the amazing conversation, and we can can do a second part anytime if you find time.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. I love your business update at some point, but I have to disappear, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Then thank you so much, and keep in touch. Take care. Take care. Thank you.